Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much, Wendell.
No designer of the 21st century have ever reached as many people with the facts of their work and the physical presence. That's how a director of London's Design Museum described Jony Ive. He has designed all the major Apple products we use today: iMac, iPad, iPhone, Apple Pencil, AirPods, and lots of others. And then he goes on and leaves Apple.
You know I can't talk to you about it.
First transitioning to part-time work and then forever. How could Apple not retain their most iconic designer? Well, here's the story. After Steve Jobs' death, Jony Ive became the most powerful Apple executive with more influence than even the new CEO, Tim Cook. Tim had a completely different management style and focused more on operations than on big design leaps. Jony was promoted and given a lot more responsibility after Cook fired Jobs' right-hand man, Scott Forstall, in 2011. Ive had to oversee not only Apple hardware, but also iOS. That meant hundreds more people to be responsible for, manage, promote, get buy-ins, fight, and argue with.
And today, it's a great thrill that I announce iOS 7.
After release of fully redesigned iOS 7, Jony was hard at work on the first new category product from Apple, the watch. Stakes were incredibly high. Without Steve Jobs and his iron fist in managing giant Apple teams, Jony felt exhausted from building consensus required to produce the new watch. He wanted to spend $25 million of marketing budget to present the new watch in a high-end fashion event and market it as a fashion accessory. Tim Cook and the marketing team were debating whether it's worth doing or not. Later, Ive would reflect that these were the first moments that he felt unsupported at Apple. He hated the corporate bloat and didn't like Cook's democratic employee structure that didn't exist when Steve was there. At the same time, operational leaders inside Cupertino were gaining power as an enormous company was changing its course from making devices to developing services. Praise for Apple's new watch was short-lived. It struggled to match Wall Street's sales expectations. Apple couldn't sell 40 million in the first year that was predicted. They only sold half as buyers complained about limited battery and functionality. At this time, Jony met with Tim Cook and asked to step back from the business. Without Steve, he had too much responsibility for product design and its marketing. He felt drained in having to fight with colleagues over promotion, overwhelmed by managing a staff that stretched into the hundreds. He was much more comfortable running his 20-person design team that he did for years. Tim Cook was afraid that investors will start selling shares if Jony leaves, so they agreed that a designer will only work on Apple's new products and will be free from daily team management. He was formally promoted to Chief Design Officer, and two of his lieutenants assumed much of his responsibilities. Ive was frustrated and burned out. A highlight of this was a product review session of iPhone X that Apple was ready to release in 2017. Jony called company's top software designers in San Francisco for a review. A team of about 20 arrived at city's exclusive social club, The Battery. They needed Ive's approval for several features on the first iPhone with a full-screen display. They waited nearly 3 hours for Jony, and when he arrived, he didn't apologize. He reviewed their printouts, offered feedback, and left without making final decisions. The work on the phone was stalled. When Tim Cook officially opened New Apple Campus, the best office building in the world, as Steve Jobs called it, Jony Ive was ready to quit. 1 month later, after unveil on June 27th, designers got a note asking them to clear their calendars for a meeting with Jony. He told them that he had completed his most important project, the Apple building, and that his time leading them was finished, reported by New York Times. When Jony created his own design firm, Love From, for a brief period of time, at least formally, Apple became one of his key clients. But in 2019, they couldn't agree on contract extension. The multi-year deal was valued at over $100 million, but it required Jony to get Apple's clearance before he could take on new clients, which included Airbnb and lots of other ones who could potentially compete with Apple. He didn't like that, and some Apple execs were uncomfortable with the contract amount, as well as several employees leaving to work at Love From. That was it. Jony Ive's era at Apple was over. Years before this, John Arlich, business writer for Sunday Times, was interviewing Ive and asked him, if Apple could no longer make stuff that shreds, not pushes the envelope, would you give up? With no hesitation, Jony replied, yes, I'd stop. I'd make things for myself, for my friends instead. The bar needs to be high.
Is because I think our species deserves better. It deserves some thought.
It is this inherent passion for purity, integrity, for giving a damn that is the most powerful force driving Ive to leave Apple, just as it pivots from his beloved hardware to services.
Jony Ive's exit forever changed the balance of power at a company defined by its product ingenuity. Apple lost one of its most creative thinkers and the driving force behind majority of the products that they sell today. This is Jony Ive and why he left Apple. If you guys like these videos, then please leave a comment, hit a subscribe button for content like this, and I'll do more of these, of course. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.